Good afternoon and welcome back to A Positive Light. I am on. Last time I forgot to turn my pack on. I'm your host, Joni Lane, and thank you for joining us today. We are here every Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time, and it is called A Positive Light because I have a nonprofit called The Positive Light in Kelseyville. And what we do there is it's a meditation center, and we hold personal growth classes and meditation classes. And on Mondays, which is today, at 7 o'clock we have a meditation class every Monday, and there is no cost. It's donation based because we are a nonprofit. And the meditation classes can be anything from mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation, Vipassana meditation. The second Tuesday of every month, I hold the 12 and Zen class, which is based on the book 12 and Zen by Bill Cumbine. And that is also at 7 o'clock, and there is no cost. I'm also a Reiki master, so I do teach Reiki first degree, second degree, master, and teacher. And the last Friday of every month, I hold a Reiki Healing Circle. And very powerful, very healing circle. It fills up quickly, so if you're interested in joining us for that, please contact me and let me know so I can add your name to the list. My contact information will be flashing up on the screen throughout today's show, so you can find a way to get a hold of me either through email or by calling me. And you're also welcome to look at the website at apositivelight.com and our calendar page and check out what's going on. We do add classes often. I also teach Qigong classes, and those will be going up on the calendar soon. If you'd like to watch any of these shows, they are archived on that website as well on the television tab on that website. So you're welcome to watch them as often as you like. There's quite a bit of information on learning how to meditate, the Four Noble Truths, and a whole variety of things. So please check that out. They're all named and labeled so you can select the one that you think fits you best, and check that out and see how that works for you. Please let me know if you have an idea that you'd like me to add or we can talk about. If you know of a teacher, or if you are a teacher that you'd like to hold a class at the meditation center, let me know. I love having guests on the show as well. So if you have a positive message you'd like to share, I would love to hear it. Contact me and maybe you can be the guest on our show. Speaking of guests on our show, today we have Helen Turley and Norb Yates. Thank you for being here with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Of course. And we've had both Norb and Helen on individually before, so we're really fortunate to have them on together today. Norb and Helen hold classes, personal growth classes of various kinds of classes at their place in Lakeport, California, at the Sun House. Is that the name of your place, the Sun House?
Yes.
In Lakeport.
Yes.
So I believe you have a class coming up on the 1st, then the graphic for that just came up. And we will also be putting that on throughout the show today too, so the information to contact them is on that graphic, and a little bit of information about the class they'll be holding next Monday, correct? On
Correct.
the 1st. So maybe first of all, you can introduce the world to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves? How long have you been in the area? How long have you been together? Let's get to know you a little bit. So who would like to start? How about Helen?
Well, I have actually been coming to Lake County for about 50 years. Always wanted to live here, so 16 years ago I retired and moved to Lake County and have been living here ever since. I call it God's country. I love it here. I was born in San Francisco, raised on the peninsula. My career was with Weight Watchers. retired, I was the regional manager for the Western United States. Loved doing that while I did it, and I'm very happy to be retired.
Wow. That's quite a lot. So I had no idea that you were originally from San Francisco. That's very interesting. I have a friend, actually a brother-in-law, who lives in San Francisco today and swears that their vacation home is in God's country. And I keep telling them, no, it's not. This is God's country. So you're absolutely right.
I agree.
And Norm, how about you? How long have you been in the area?
I've been in the area since I met Helen. And about 2 years after we met, I came for a visit and stayed. So before that, I lived in quite a few different places. And more recently before that, I lived in Milwaukee and also in Florida. Florida during the winter, which I never thought I'd see myself do, but it is so pleasurable to leave Milwaukee in the cold and get off a plane and go with shorts and a t-shirt that I could see being a snowbird. I actually could. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I grew up a lot of my life in Sacramento area. So I stayed because of Helen. I was not used to, I grew up in a very small town in Montana, similar to, well, actually even smaller than Lakeport, which is where we live. And I was, after bigger cities like Milwaukee and Sacramento, I wasn't used to going back to, I want to go to Best Buy. Well, it just didn't happen quite the same way. So it took me a little getting used to. When I really find my appreciation for it is when I'm driving in traffic in a larger city. And I think, my gosh, what a pleasure it is to not be in this kind of an environment of traffic so much that it used to be just part of my life.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the city may have convenient amenities, but the traffic, I don't miss it at all. I
Yeah.
love the fact that we can pretty much go where we want to go and not have to wait huge lines of traffic to get there. And it's beautiful here. I was driving in today from Kelseyville to Lower Lake, where the studio is, and there's wildflowers still blooming, and everything's green and gorgeous mountains and hills and trees. And I actually said, we live in a beautiful area, and I say that. I catch myself saying that so many times throughout, just in the week. But it really is beautiful here. And I was raised in a small town in Sebastopol, so I appreciate the small town. I feel at home in this small town. So Florida in the winter instead of Milwaukee, yeah, I could see that.
Yep.
It gets pretty warm here in the summer times, but we have a giant lake, beautiful lake. And we should actually have more tourists up here in case you want to visit us. We like sharing it. We just don't want you to move here. We like sharing it, but not that much.
Well, we're not keeping the place a secret. That's
No, we're not keeping
you're
it a
broadcasting it.
It is kind of hard to get here. We do have to go over mountains to get
Yeah.
here, but it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. We don't have a whole lot of economy here, but the people, I think that's why we love it here so much. We depend on each other. We have a lot of mom and pop businesses, and a lot of the people here are retired. So it's really a nice community. Even though it's a large community, it's a very nice community.
When I
It's-
retired, I was somewhat concerned about whether there would be anything to do. And there are so many activities that you have to pick and choose. So it certainly isn't a place to come if you don't want to be bored, because there's lots of things to do here.
Yeah. And then in your case, you've started your own classes that you're teaching, personal growth classes. And I know that you taught before various classes. One of them was called, what was the one that you just finished? Living in Awareness and Gratitude is something that you've recently done. And now an upcoming class next Monday, June 1st, you have one scheduled. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, what that's all about?
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
It's a class called Living the Five Agreements, and it comes from a source of Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote a book called The Four Agreements back in the end of the 70s, I believe it was. And both Helen and I took classes from Don Miguel and studied kind of the principles that he taught in terms of change. And both of us consider this class and all the classes we teach as kind of an undoing or an unlearning. It's not so much that we're adding to people's knowledge. It's much more like we're undoing the things that don't serve us any longer. And so we just finished a class on what really matters. And it was a 6-week class. But it had that kind of a vitality to it where you could see people making changes as we talked, as we dialogued, are you sure of that? I mean, just that whole questioning process that we need if we truly want to make any changes in our life.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the underpinning for everything we teach, the Enneagram and the 5 agreements in this case, they all underpin the idea of let go of the things that don't work for you, which we call the undoing. So very briefly, the 5 agreements, and it's a 6-week class, and the first class is devoted to domestication. It's it's devoted to that idea of how did we get to where we're at today? And what are the powers that keep us in the spot of automatic responding? And then we go into be impeccable with your word, don't take things personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. And the 5th agreement, which Don Miguel wrote about later, which is be skeptical but listen. And he had said a number of times in class that if he could just present one agreement to us, it would be the be skeptical but listen. Because what he's talking about is he's talking about be skeptical of what that mind talk that we have is saying to us. And in a way, it's like intervention. It's a way to intervene instead of responding in an automatic, habitual way, but to be able to intervene and say, wait a minute, do I really want to do that again? It didn't work last time. So that's kind of what the class is about. It's from 6:30 to 8:30 on Monday nights. And it's a combination of dialogue and investigation, I would say.
Okay, so throughout the class, it sounds like you present the ideas from the book,
We do.
and you actually have a conversation with the people in the class about it and how that relates to them personally and things that they can let go of that they've learned. Now they need to unlearn them. So that's a little confusing to some people. And when you're talking about unlearning behavior, it's very difficult to do when we're raised being told you must do it this way. This is the way you do things. There's a set of directions that's almost downloaded into our brain that's it's in our hard drive. It's hard to get rid of. How do you let go of the things that you were taught? This is how I get through life. This is how I survive. So now you're telling me to do it differently.
No, we're not telling you to do it differently, though. That's the key. Because if we just say it, then it doesn't change. People need to come to it on their own. So the investigation really has to do with asking people to look and be honest, to have that integrity of their word that takes us into seeing the truth of it, that we might be doing it for an ungodly number of possible reasons, but that but we're on automatic with it. we're not responding out of thought. We're responding out of a way that we believe to be true. And I, the more I've looked at it, the more I've found, boy, so much garbage went in and stayed for a long, long time.
And I think people who come to class have read the book, talk about how simple those agreements are, and yet how difficult they are to live. And so I think that's really when we taught before we called the class Living the 4 agreements then, and then subsequently Don Miguel wrote the 5th agreement. So that's been incorporated into what we teach. So they are very, very simple concepts, but a challenge to live, to remember who we really are. I always think of it, Norba refers to it as unlearning, I think of it as remembering. We're really remembering who we really are.
Yeah.
Good way to say it.
And I think saying it in different ways like that is really important because I may understand it better one way. My mind might work better in one way than in another, depending on how I hear something. And it's funny because you can say the same words to someone, and depending on the day, the mood they're in, the things that have happened to them, those same words could mean different things as they hear them differently. So I love the fact that you can describe it in different ways because one person may not understand what you mean, but then they get what the other person is saying too. Now you were talking a little bit about Enneagrams. What are Enneagrams? What is that? What does that word mean? A lot of people don't really understand what Enneagrams are. So maybe we can explain a little bit about that. Clarify that for us.
I'll start it off. There was a bunch of times when I really wish they hadn't named that personality system the Enneagram. It just has it's actually a Greek word, and it just means 9 sides or 9 types. So Enneam means 9. But what it really does is it gets us to our core motivation, our core belief about what life should be about. Not necessarily what life is, but what life should be about. And what we find is we find our basic attention placement. Now that may sound a little bit complicated, but basically we're finding out what's motivating us and really coming face to face with it. And the last class we did with that, we did a 7-week class with the Enneagram, just comparing different types. Like Helen is a doer. She's an achiever, get it done. She's never joined a club where she wasn't asked to be some sort of an officer at some point. And I'm much more a think about it type guy. So Helen can have it all done while I'm still trying to figure out how to do it, or the right way to do it. And she's already done it. So that's part of the understanding of not taking things personally, if you will, that we talk about in the 4 agreements or the 5 agreements. But we get to see that other people are just motivated the way they're motivated, just like we were motivated the way we are motivated. And it's not personal. And in a relationship, it is just powerful.
It's an extremely valuable tool, I think, in all relationships.
Because of the fact that it helps you identify the other person's personality and can help you understand where they're coming from in that regard? Is that what you mean?
Well, I think also not just for others, but for yourself, the relationship with yourself, to understand what actually is driving your energy. That's really what it's all about, what drives your energy. And to not judge it, to just understand it and to see how you develop that strategy growing up as a child. You know, it's really a strategy to stay safe in the world. And so it really helps eliminate the judgment of yourself and the judgment of others. And so I just think it's an extremely valuable tool also in conjunction with the other classes that we teach. with the five agreements and learning about domestication and how that came about. And I think we're the only Toltec teachers that I know of that actually integrate the two.
I think so too. And I think it's really powerful when you explain that the five agreements, what they mean. So a lot of people haven't read, if they read the four agreements, they may not necessarily have read the fifth agreement. And then to integrate it with the Enneagram class to help you understand yourself a little bit better, help you understand your partner maybe, or just other people in your class. It helps communication because you understand yourself better. Why do I react the way I do? Why do I think the way I think? Is it the best way for me to think? Does this give me what I need? Does this serve me in this moment? I think it's really similar to the things that I teach in the Four Noble Truths, is that suffering exists, but suffering exists because we get attached to the desired outcome that we want, and then when it doesn't happen, we get very upset about it. But why? Where does that come from? So this is a little deeper look at that and where that comes from. Does it serve me? Is it the truth? And I think in the Buddhism teachings that I've had, the truth is the root of every teaching. The truth of the words that you're using, the truth of how you're affecting yourself and others, the truth of your walking your true path. Are you actually being true to yourself? That's a truth. So it sounds really similar in the classes that we're teaching along the same lines. And I think having a variety of classes like this is very important because, as I said before, everybody thinks differently. And the same words in a sentence can affect me differently than they would someone else because they've been domesticated differently than I have, so they have a different personality. Mm-hmm. So domestication is a very big word that sounds a lot like brainwashing. And in a sense, I suppose it is. We are brainwashed to a certain degree. Our parents did teach us things because they wanted to keep us safe. They taught us the things that they thought would keep us safe. May not necessarily be the best things, may not necessarily serve us in the best way, but it was with good intention. As adults, we can look at those things now and think, what can I let go of? What are the changes I can make? And these classes that you hold with the five agreements and the Enneagrams really help identify those things and help someone take a really good look at them and kind of pick and choose what I can let go of and maybe I can look at something differently. And I believe from listening to you talk that it kind of helps people open up to that. Someone may enter these classes being very closed off to these ideas, and then suddenly the suggestion of these agreements is opening a door that, well, maybe this will work for me. Maybe this will make me a little happier. Maybe I can let go of some of the stuff I've carried around with me for so long. Yeah. So is that, did I make an assumption there and all that, or did I kind of hit the nail on the head?
I think that's a great summary of teaching in general because we teach from many different teachers in different books. We have people in our class who started 8 years ago and they're still coming. Because there's always more. There's always, it's like there's no place to go, really, but a lot to remember. And so, we really diversify. We don't teach strictly from Don Miguel's work. We teach Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, the Course in Miracles. Norb studied the Course in Miracles more extensively than I have, but we integrate it all because there's really only one truth. And as you described, the Buddha's teaching, there's still one truth.
We only do this particular class once a year. So it's not a ongoing, rotating every 6 weeks or something. It's an important class, but it is also, it has its limits. Because we are following the 5 agreements, and we are taking them into more depth. And yet there is so much other gifts out there, so many other gifts from different modalities. You mentioned the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. I mean, my gosh. When we get right down to it, it just seems like at the base we're all kind of saying the same thing,
I think we are. Yeah,
and just in different ways.
exactly. And no matter who the teacher is, whether it's Eckhart Tolle or Wayne Dyer or there's so many. There are so
Yes.
many teachers,
Right.
and I think they're all trying to convey the same lesson to us, and using different words and different methods to try to get through to us. So since we're all unique and we're all individuals, hopefully one of them will penetrate and really help us be happier people, which is, I think, our goal here, is to try to help others be happy and ourselves as well. And
I think this particular class is a good one for anyone getting started. It is the introductory class, so if people haven't attended any of our classes in the past, this would be a good one to start out with, because it is introductory and it is specifically focused on Miguel's work and the 5 agreements.
yeah, and those,
We
those-
still include a lot of other things just because that's who we are. That's where we
Everybody who
come
comes to
from.
class learns the Enneagram. And usually it's go out and Google Enneagram, and we have some links that they can go take tests, and then they bring it back. But we use it in class a lot because we display energy. And it's such a gift to be able to say, well, yeah, look at this, and be able to point it out and dialogue on the spot. You mentioned something earlier, which is people come to the truth where sometimes when they first show up, it's more about how can I use this for my personal, so I won't be quite as much in suffering type thing. But I don't really want to look at it, and I don't really want to have to change. And when you get to the point of understanding how domesticated we really are, we find out that it's not just some small thing that runs our life. It runs our total life. And what we finally come to is we come to the idea that life is just the way it is. And it's what we believe about life, what we truly believe about life, that gives us our experience of either heaven or hell, basically.
Mhm. And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think how we view a situation determines our own happiness. Now, this example comes to mind immediately to me is one of my children wanted, when they were really young, 8 years old, said, "Mommy, I want to own a lot of land, and I want to live on a ranch, and I want to have horses and cattle." They were going on and on and on in great detail about what they wanted, and he was really upset because he's like, "I don't think I can ever have those things." And I said, "Of course you can. If you can't financially afford to buy them, you could always be a ranch hand, because you'd still have them. It depends on how you look at it. You're still living on the ranch. You're still living the life that you want to live. Someone else is actually taking the responsibility to pay for it all, so that's a benefit." It's really about how you view life. And the situations you're in can be viewed differently. So if it's not a happy situation, you can make the conscious choice to view it differently. And I think the 5 agreements helps us understand where that automatic viewing comes from. And the Enneagram helps us understand why we are the way we are, how we're programmed the way we are, and how the 5 agreements can be worked depending on our numbers that we come up with the Enneagram. So this is a really terrific class, and I encourage you to contact Helen and Norb regarding this class. It starts next week. They will be holding other classes, but this particular one, like they said, they only hold once a year. So their contact information is up on the screen now. Please make a note of it. If for some reason you can't copy this down right now, please feel free to contact me, and I will pass it on to you, either through email or by phone. My information is on my website, apositivelight.com, if you can't jot down what you're looking at right now. We're going to take a break for about 2 minutes, and then we will be back with Helen Turley and Norb Yates. So stay with us and come back in a couple of minutes right after this commercial. Thank you.
You're invited to participate in a true multimedia experience coming to a home near you. LCM TV is bringing Lake County into the new millennium with news, live broadcast, information, music, talk shows, and local programming, all streaming in high definition online and soon to be on your Roku box. Join us at lcm-tv.com or be a part of our studio audience. You can also watch the shows at lakecomagazine.com as we provide programming to inform, enlighten, and maybe even enrage you. On Lake County Magazine Talk Show with Terry and Pete the Tax Guy, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Like racing? Try the Checkered Flag Show, hosted by Ace Naylor on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. All ages and divisions in regional and national fields. Joni Lane brings a positive light to you every Monday at 3 p.m. Pasha Space brings an international flair as they discuss ecological, health, and social issues in Haiti with people around the world. End up your week with positive, conscious sounds on Saturday at 9 a.m. with Sister T on the Bridge. This show is also simulcast on KMEC 105.1 FM in Ukiah. Our latest show, LCM TV News, is brought to you live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at noon, and rebroadcast at 6:30 p.m. and noon daily, Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday, featuring national, regional, and local news, weather, and sports. We have it all here for you on your local TV station, LCM TV. Join us online and soon on Roku, giving you access to all the best Lake County has to offer. We are LCMTV.com, your multimedia connection. Tune in for the fun. It's live TV at its best.
Hi, welcome back to A Positive Light. I am your host, Joni Lane. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show, you were listening to music by Sam Houston from his album Beyond the Crescent Moon. And if you're interested in purchasing the album, visit his website, samhouston.com, or you can contact me. I also have his CDs. They're beautiful music, wonderful meditation music, or just relaxation music. But I really like them. That's why I play them here. And he's a very talented musician, good friend of mine. Today we have Helen, I almost called you Helen Yates, and that's not your name, Helen Turley and Norb Yates on. And we were talking about their upcoming class next Monday, June 1st, on the 5 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz and how they integrate the Enneagrams into those classes. And this is a class they hold once a year, and so it's a great time to contact them now to sign up for the class. And there is room still available, is that correct? 2 spaces? Okay, so yeah, you want to get in on this class, you better contact them. They're filling up quickly. So much information, and one of the things that we wanted to clarify before we move on is Helen brought up a great point that the Enneagrams is a system. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit for us and tell us a little bit more about, it's not an identification number, it's more about a system.
Right. There are a series of personality characteristics that we identify with that determine the type. And often, when we first introduce it, the reaction can be, I don't want to be put in a box. And it really is a system to get you out of the box once you understand those characteristics. And it's said that if when you take the quizzes and figure out your type, if you like it, it's probably not your type because most people don't when they first get involved. So, but it's fascinating, and most people, once they really understand how it all works, really get hooked.
So let me understand, because I've never really taken the Enneagram classes, but I did take the test online. And I took 3 separate tests, and depending on my mood and how I answered the questions, I had 3 different answers. But one thing kept coming up was 9. And it's funny because I did not want to be a 9. I did not want to be a 9, but it tells me a lot about myself. Why didn't I want to be a 9? What is it that I don't like about that? What are those character defects or characteristics that I'm looking at that I don't particularly want to have with me? So that is a huge step to go from there into my learning process of what I want to let go of, things I may want to change. And on that topic, is it, because I'm confused, and I'm sure other people who aren't familiar with this may be confused, if I am a 9, will that change after I've taken these classes and understood more about myself? Or does my number change, or does my core belief change, my identification change? How does that work?
I'll let Norb answer that one.
Okay.
Well, first of all, let me say what a 9 is, because when we throw the numbers out, sometimes it gets into that place of, well, what the heck's a number mean?
Yeah.
And the numbers really aren't important in the Enneagram. But a 9 is generally known as a mediator or a peacemaker. And they don't want conflict in their lives, and they want to bring conflict into resolution. So Henry Kissinger was probably the best known mediator in terms of a greatness and a name recognition that's known. So 9s just don't want to fight about anything. They also they have a basic trust in life, and that basic trust means, well, it's going to be okay. Most of the mediators that I've known in my life, they're pretty laid back, or they can be pretty laid back, and especially about themselves. So that's kind of in a nutshell. 9s look a little different. They're energetic wise, they're laid back.
I think, too, it's interesting. Most people key right in on all the negative characteristics and say, that's not the type I want to be. And when you heard Norb describe the 9, he was really describing some really positive characteristics of a type 9. So, there are certainly positive characteristics that we want to keep and build on. And then as we identify those negative characteristics that really haven't served us very well, then we have the opportunity to change without knowing what they are or really identifying them. And I don't like to call them defects, because I don't believe that we're defective human beings, but just features of our personality that we developed to be safe. So, it makes sense.
Right.
One of the most powerful things about the Enneagram is that in looking at it, we come to accept all the gifts that we can identify through the system, through using the Enneagram system. But we also come to accept those things that, well, aren't quite so pretty. And that means that we're not hiding those things from ourselves. And that gives us a tremendous amount of power to respond to life by claiming all sides of ourselves and really getting that out in the open. I've just seen so much with people changing on the spot in our classes and it's not about Helen and I, it's really about the people themselves. And all of a sudden they're saying, okay, I admit I'm a boss type, dang it. That's just the way it's going to be. Now, one of the gifts that happens is that when we start being able to see it, we can start making changes. But that core motivation that we've always had doesn't go away. And the real challenge is a challenge of mindfulness, of paying attention to when that urge comes up, to, instead of confronting something that needs to be confronted, but to move away from it and say, no, it'll be okay. Or in my case, to find more information, or in Helen's case, to go out and do something. When those arise in us, we can make a different choice if we want to. and only if we want to. But we don't have the ability to make a different choice if we're not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Helen mentioned the Enneagram from the point of view of we don't like to think we're in a box, but we are. Mm-hmm. We're in a box from our domestication and our belief system and what all the authorities taught us, etc. And this really is about being able to, you could call it get out of the box, or you could call it enlarge the box to expand bigger and bigger and bigger. But my experience is the urge doesn't go away. It still arises. And it's the mindfulness that changes everything.
And for people who are listening or watching, you can go online and find many different sites that talk about the Enneagram. And, sometimes people say, well, I'm all of that. And that is true. I have some characteristics that we identify in all of the types. But there is a driving force. It's called the core fixation in the Enneagram type that never does change. That will always be with you. They recommend when you take the quizzes, most of them, that you do it or try to remember when you were about 25 years old. That's probably the most accurate, because at this stage in our lives, we have made some changes. So, if you can, for me, remembering back to 25 was a bit of a challenge, but I happen to be a stereotypical type, so it was pretty easy for me to determine my type.
Yeah, you mentioned 25, and my immediate reaction was, I don't want to remember what I was. I had some life issues going on at 25, so I wasn't acting the best. But so what I'm getting out of this also is, I loved how you described, Norb, with the opening of the box is how I would look at it, or adding. I don't think we need to change who we are. I think we are who we are, and I think our root person is our root person, wherever it came from. Domestication certainly is a huge part of it, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. Understanding the truth of who we are, and then offering ourselves different choices of how to act and react to things, perhaps. Because we understand ourselves better, because we've gotten to know who our core being is through this Enneagram system, and through looking at the 5 agreements, and what does that mean to me, and how does that affect me, and why do I think the way I think? Why do I react the way I react? Why is this so habitual? Can I add things? Can I give myself choices to do something different? It's not a matter of changing who you are. It's a matter of adding to your personality. Giving yourself some flowers to wear in your hair, some garnishes to your life, perhaps. So we're all perfect. We're born perfect. Life happened to us, and sometimes we react negatively. We have reasons for it. We have reasons for reacting negatively. We have reasons for reacting positively. Not always in our best interests, and not always the healthiest. But these are great classes on how to add more to your life, how to look at the truth of what's really going on, the truth of who you are, the truth of some areas you may want to look at that are unhappy, and you felt maybe that you couldn't change them, that you were stuck in an unhappy place, and maybe you felt like you didn't have a choice. I'm always going to be stuck in this unhappy place because. Maybe not. Maybe with these classes, you can give yourself some choices. Maybe you can be happy. Maybe you can look at life a little differently, or react to life differently.
I think I can speak just for myself, obviously, but I was seeking something, and that's why I was drawn to follow a different path than the path I was on in my life. And I think that's true for most people. When people come to our classes, we always state that up front. If you're perfectly happy with your life the way it is, then there's nothing that you need to change. It's just, there's just nothing to change if you're perfectly happy. I wasn't. And so the classes that I took prior to actually Norb and I getting together and teaching put me on a path toward a better life.
And would you like to talk about some of that prior to meeting Norb and going into this path? What type of classes were you taking, and what were you looking into at the time?
Well, actually, I got involved with the Toltec work. I found a teacher actually at the beginning down in Santa Rosa and got interested in the Toltec work. I was also in recovery, and so I was doing in a 12-step program, I was doing the 12 steps. And this work seemed like an opportunity to take the 12 steps deeper. And so I was drawn to it, and as a matter of fact, that's how I met Norb. We ended up in Tennessee together on one of the events that they were holding, and the rest is history.
It sounds like good history. I've also been in 12 steps for 26 years, I think. I'm going to have to do my math, but I think 26 years. And there's a point in no matter what 12-step program you've been in, there comes a time when it becomes repetitive and almost after a while so redundant that we don't really think about what we're saying anymore when we're saying the steps. So I felt the same way, is I needed something to kind of deepen my relationship with my steps. And when I met Bill Crumbeen, who wrote the book 12 and Zen, I actually bugged him about it to write the book because he's pairing the steps with the Buddhist koan. And when I started meditating on the koan in regard to the step, I started looking at it differently and seeing it differently, and it started to mean something a little deeper to me. And in this case, I could see how the 5 agreements in the Enneagram would really make a difference if you're in a 12-step program, whatever 12-step program that is. For example, in the 12 and Zen that I hold, we have 12 steps for normal people. And I don't know if there's any normal people in the world, but societal normal is considered a group of people. And there's actually steps. So they've tried to take the average person without any addiction problems and write steps for them. And I think that's very admirable, because the basic root of it is, if everyone took the 12 steps seriously, we'd have a great planet to live on.
Absolutely.
So if you're not in a program, that's okay. We love you anyway. But but the 12 steps really has helped so many people get a deeper relationship with the truth of who they are. And the 5 agreements is another way of doing that. And I think it really enhances the knowledge that we have of ourselves so that we can be the best people we can be to make the world a better place, starting with us.
In fact, the Enneagram itself is a spiritual path in and of itself. So you could just follow the Enneagram if that's the choice that you made.
Now explain that a little bit. What do you mean by that? It's a spiritual path in itself. It's a system.
I'll let Norb
based on
explain
that.
But
Expand.
The 3 different takeoffs on the Enneagram. One was strictly psychological. How can you give up suffering and what's been going on in your past and all of that, to bring the beliefs into play that the Enneagram really exposes for people. And so there was a great gift that was brought into that. And then the next one was business. Bring it into business. I worked with a very small group of like 8 people, and we all knew the Enneagram cold. And it was dynamite, because we knew each other's strength and weaknesses and how to complement and how to play and where to double check and the gifts that some brought to the table of speaking on their feet, and others did better with the research. So, and then the final one, which really was the beginning point, was a spiritual path of realizing that whatever we describe with the Enneagram isn't the truth of who we are. That's just the roles that we learn to play in life. And when we can understand that it's all just a role, then we get the idea that there's something more to us than just this programmed mind and this body, but there's something that we are connected to a higher spirit that is really who we are. And to follow that part instead of the part of looking at why we do things or what we do, but always being able to respond from the higher self point of view is just,
It's a path in and of itself.
yeah.
So actually making the choice to respond from the higher self.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will define the higher self in many different ways.
Oh,
Some
boy.
people, I've heard people refer to it as the divine spark inside of me, or a lot of meditators will say the truth of the core truth of who I am, which is a person that sits inside of me as I sit. And when you look inside of your heart and you ask yourself honestly who you are, we really do know. We really do know what we've been taught to ignore that or not listen to it or not trust it, because we've been domesticated to think other thoughts and to react different ways. So when we do that, it kind of squashes that genuine, honest, authentic person. And that's kind of sad, because we're losing so much of ourselves and our own identity when that happens, when we squash the authenticity of who we really are.
It's true, however, that we don't escape the domestication. So it seems as if that's why we're here, to go through what we go through to be able to get to that place. I always think of my higher self as what animates this body. And who would have thought that until I started doing this work? I certainly didn't. No.
Let me just say one thing, and that is that domestication is not a bad thing. Domestication is an absolute necessity for us learning language and learning to communicate and being able to see, oh, that's a door over there, and see another door and realize that they both have knobs on them, they both have locks. But to understand life, even as it is, without the story, that's domestication too. And none of us would be in this room today or being able to communicate with each other without domestication. So it's a gift of being able to pass on that kind of information. The problem comes with exactly what you were talking about, which has to do with all of our domestication wasn't about raising our spirits, but about telling us the so-called truth about ourselves. And that was limiting.
And depending on who told us that.
Oh, very much.
And for the most part, our teachers and our parents and our peers have told us things because they're trying to help us. But they're telling us through their eyes what they think with the intention of helping. But as children, we just buy into it and believe it, whether it's positive or not. Sometimes it is. We do need to know the names of things. We do need to be able to communicate and speak. And for the most part, I think we were raised feeling pretty good about who we were. But then we run into work and classmates and trying to live up to expectations that we think we need to live up to because so-and-so said, or the pressure from this person made us feel uncomfortable with who we are, so I need to be different. That's part of growing. It's part of becoming a human being, an adult human being, a responsible adult human being. There's a lot of confusion that happens between the ages of 3 and 18. And we don't quite always know where to grasp, what to hold on to, what to let go of. So I think we do a really good job, and I think for the most part we have good intentions in ourselves, and most of our teachers have good intentions. But by the time we get to be adults, there are so many messages from not just our teachers, but from the media. The media is huge, and we are so addicted to the media in commercialism of how we should look and how we should act and how we should be, that it's very difficult to hold on to the authenticity of who you truly are. And this is a great way to get back to that, to get down to the root of who you are, looking at it, realizing that you were born perfect. You were born perfect. You're a beautiful, loving person. And to kind of get back to that, who you were. Now, whether it's a matter of looking at it as I need to shed the teachings so that I could rediscover myself, or if it's a matter of I want to remember who I was before life happened to me. I think it's a matter of how you look at it, and one way may work for you better than another. But I think what we come down to is how can you find the core of who you truly are and be happy with that, and take the things that we're not so happy about and still be happy with them. Well, a lot of people tell me I'm stubborn. Stubborn. Never. See, my first reaction is to say, no, I'm not. Yeah, I am. And I am stubborn. But in a lot of ways, it's a really good thing because it helps me get things done. It helps me look at, some things I need to be stubborn about because I need to follow through. And so being stubborn is a positive thing. I like to look at it that way.
Just as a quick aside, in the Enneagram world, the mediator is known as occasionally being stubborn beyond reason.
And she thinks.
But also in the Enneagram, the 9 or the mediator is known as the type that everybody loves.
Yes.
So it all works.
See,
It all works, and it's all part of who we are. And
is.
it's okay accepting that and just loving ourselves for who we are is an important part of all of this. I think it's the foundation. Learning how to do that is the foundation of all of this work.
And I think that's what people probably come to you and say is that I'm unhappy or I'm stuck or I'm feeling not good about something about themselves. I need to get out of this feeling. Can you do that with this class? Can you help me with this? And I know that you've said that you aren't the one that teaches the class, but you hold the class and you share the 5 agreements and you share your knowledge in that. And I know a lot of the people that have come to you in the classes and they come back and say, Helen and Norb are such good teachers because they allow me to discover who I am, and they don't tell me whether it's right or wrong. They just tell me, yep, you are. And they encourage me, and they love me through it, and they're beautiful people. So these classes are very positive, and I've heard nothing but positive things from the people that have gone. So I'm so grateful that you hold these classes, and the other personal growth classes that you hold as well. So if someone wants to get a hold of you for either this class or some of the other classes, they can call you at the number that comes up on the screen.
Yes.
And if you have future classes coming up, do you have a website or any information that you'd like to put on the air now? Because I think we have some information on the air, but...
It may be on the flyer, but it's www.toltecs.com.
Okay.
And
you post your classes on that.
And we post our classes, usually not real far in advance, but we also...
We have a mailing list, too.
We send out a mailing list, infrequent, only to announce here's a new class and an opportunity. And
That's great. And how many people do you have in your class at a time generally?
We limit it to 12 to 14.
we had 12 in the class before for the last class. The last class we only had 6, which was a beautiful size because we were working on some very deep spiritual stuff and bringing in a lot of different source material. So in this class so far we have 10 signed up.
Okay.
And I just want to add that we've heard only positive about all the classes you teach too.
Yes.
Oh,
So
thank you.
we're so grateful that you're here.
Well, I think we do teach along the same lines.
Yeah.
And I think our intention is to try to help people be the happiest they can be, because want to make the world a better place, we need to start with ourselves. So unfortunately we're out of time, but because I think we could go on and talk about these topics for another hour. But please do give Helen and Norm a call and find out if you can't get into this class, perhaps you can get into one of their other classes. They're very, very good classes, wonderful people. I highly recommend them. And if you need to get in contact with them and you didn't get a chance to write down the number, please give me a call or an email, and I will pass that information off to you. In the meantime, take good care of yourself this week, and I will see you next week, Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. Thank you, LCM TV, for having us today. We had a wonderful time. Thank you, Norm and Helen, for joining me
Thank
today.
you, Joni.
Thank you,
Wonderful sharing
Joni.
this.
It's great to be
And
here.
I hope you come back. I love having you on the show. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So take care of yourselves. See you next week.